What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. I'm super excited. I've had this episode planned for several months now, and this is a difference maker. I know we have, that's who we have on the show as difference makers, but Jackie is so special that we're doing a virtual episode because I know she's everywhere. She's actually coming to us from Charlotte, where she's from, and travels all over the country making a difference. She's super passionate about entrepreneurs, and I'm so excited to get into her story and learn more. So Jackie, welcome to the show.
I'm really excited to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
Super excited. And we were, you just mentioned introduced from Christine Reyes, who was on the show a few months back, and I've had the pleasure of working side by side with, and just an incredible difference maker.
Well, having her on your show really, when she told me about you, I was just like, if you love him, I'm going to love him too. I want to be introduced. So she is amazing. She's thought so highly by so many EOS implementers, but as long as I'm top of her list, that's all I care about.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yes.
I know. You got to keep track of those people, like the difference makers, right? And just stay in front of them. That's been a big part of
100%.
what this show has been for me, is to be able to invite people like yourself and to continue building that relationship.
Yeah, well, you just said it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, but you have to pick the few that you are. They're the people that are your go-tos. Christine is definitely one of mine.
Super awesome. So Jackie, that we were just kind of talking about growing up as a first generation American citizen and growing up with a family of entrepreneurs. And I'm really big into story and the reason why we do what we do. And so I think that's an awesome place to start.
Awesome. Yeah. So I am firstborn in the United States. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My dad came over on a boat and fell in love with my mom, and here I am. And he was in the music business for around 50 years. It was his passion, and he was successful at it. But as you can imagine, when you have someone whose first passion is music, you definitely had highs and lows of life. More highs and lows, but it's all there. And he being a triple type A personality definitely added to whether they were the highs of highs or lows of lows. When I went to school for psychology, my passion play is always helping people elevate to their next level. It's always been that way. And so I went to school for psychology, and then after school, I grew up with large companies, which is a little different than what I do now. But I grew up with Dun& Bradstreet, was relocated all over the country. When I went into leadership, I was pretty quickly identified as kind of a fix-it gal for underperforming offices, regions, divisions, and eventually companies. And honestly, I always attribute it to my psychology background. I mean, I was a suicide counselor. I was a rehab counselor in dual diagnosis. I was trained in active listening, and that very easily parlayed its way into business. What I would do is I would meet with executive leaders, find out what's going on in their office, work with the people, and create process and goals, hold people accountable to them, and then celebrate successes. Now, the thing with Dun& Bradstreet is that just meant I was moving again, which, at that time I didn't mind. But I did that at Dun& Bradstreet, Wells Fargo Corporate Executive Board, was brought down to the LA Times for the second time going to California to help create training, reorganize their inside sales, and launch a new product. And then I was headhunted to Vistage Worldwide, which is a CEO peer organization. And it's so hilarious. So first off, it's the first time that I had sort of an influential leadership role versus direct. But I walked into about 100, working with 100 of my fathers, triple type A personality entrepreneurs who wanted to grow their business. The cool thing was, is this time I had some tools to help them and was able to take that spot in Vistage from the number 10 spot to the number 2 spot in about a year. One of the, I want to grab the book. One of the chairs, Vistage chairs, brought me the book. Oops, upside down. Traction, um, written by Gino Wickman. And he's like, this is where Vistage doesn't have this. We don't have anything at Vistage for the entrepreneurs and members that we have. So I read it and I fell in love with it because it was everything that I did just by, I don't know, gut instinct, except it was documented in a proven process that was global and had a community. So when I decided I wanted to go on my own, I spoke with a couple implementers and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I haven't looked back since. It's been it's pretty shy of 6 years. And I, went through COVID with it, in LA. I relocated from California to back to the East Coast. But I every crater I could have fallen into of, like I did, because why not? So like having said that, about 2.5 years ago, I decided not only do I want to be an implementer, but I want to coach people who want to do what I do. So I coach new EOS implementers and help them to be successful as they launch their EOS career, in addition to the clients that I have. So I get to see both sides grow, which just fills my heart with joy, because it's amazing when you see companies like grow their revenue, grow their profitability, help their retention. And then on the implementer side, because it's a very different type of business, we're franchise owners, but growing your practice it's an interesting thing. But I got to see, and I've had the ability to see, like, people living their best EOS lives. And so it makes me smile ear to ear every time.
Well, and I think about that level of impact, 'cause you talk about these visionaries or these people, they're creating their businesses and empowering those people, and how many lives are those visionaries impacting? You look at their employees, their clients, how many lives are they really touching? And then I love from that end of working with the other implementers and empowering them, like that's empowering the empowerers. How many lives are you impacting altogether?
Oh my gosh. Well, that would help me to reach the goals that I want in my life. If I can, if only I were good at adding, that would be helpful.
I know. Well, and oftentimes, like when people say set a goal and like how many lives you're going to impact, like how do you measure that and quantify that? Because you're looking at, it's like it goes down this lineage, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So because of the extent of that and really how I want this chapter of my life to go, even outside of everything that I've done outside of EOS, it's like every person I touch, every company I'm with, I just want to help take them to the next level. And so I mean, that's what makes my cup overflow.
When there's so much to unpack. There's so much throughout that story, but one thing keying into is when you picked up and you read Traction for the first time. You talked about it being in this documented process. What were your thoughts?
I mean, holy cow! I mean, it was the process. There's six key components of EOS, right? So you've got the vision, you've got people, process, or people, data, issues, process, and then traction. And I'm going to say two parts, because as I was just saying that, I'm like, there's a part that I talk about all the time that if I had it, my life would be different. The first part is the process, because I've documented so many manuals and processes.
Hmm.
And there's a part of the process component where it's called FBA, or followed by all. So it's not just documenting, but we're training everybody in the company to it, whether they've been in the company since day one or this is their first day. They measure it on a scorecard, they manage to it, and then they adjust what the process is however many times a year they need to do it, whether it's one or four. And that just, there's so many issues in companies regarding communication and consistency and creating a foundation for growth. That was a huge part of it. The other part, and I say this every single time I'm talking to a company, you know, every place that I have been at where you go into a meeting, somebody brings up something they want to talk about. We discuss it ad nauseum. We run out of time, and it is never solved
Yeah.
until 6 months later, someone brings it up again. They were like, didn't we talk about this before? And there was no, it just sits there in issue purgatory. With
Yes.
yeah, so with EOS, so there's something called the issues component, but also every week the leadership team meets for their level 10 meeting, which is a regularly scheduled meeting. In that, they have an hour's worth of solving issues. That's where the rubber meets the road. And I mean, I love IDS and the issue solving track. Love it.
I love it in for me coming in as a fractional sales consultant, and that's how I worked with Christine. And in fact, I had
Yeah.
breakfast this morning with the client that we worked on together, and just seeing their growth through the process. But what I love is, we're talking about meetings, and somebody that's never been in that EOS life, EOS culture, and seen how it's run. You think about company meetings, and it's like you instantly get that, oh great, another meeting, because of some of the things that you're talking about, as far as we talk or we go on these rants, or and we're going on, but then there's no, even if there is a to-do list at the end and we're supposed to be accountable for stuff, it doesn't get written down, and then we come back to the next meeting and nothing got done. um,
Yes.
or here's one that if you're listening right now, you're in companies, this probably really resonates, is the sacred cow, right? Like, we can't bring that up because the boss is going to get super mad, and that's just the way things are. And so the real issue is never going to get addressed because we can't talk about the real issue.
Yes, yes, and that happens a lot, particularly around people. People that, I don't know, they've been with the company a long time, or they're related, or there's so a lot of people parts for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But the process through that, and working through it, and again having an implementer come in like yourself, that if you're self-implementing as a company, it's so easy, I think, to fall back into those habits, where what I've seen, and I've never worked with you directly, but having an implementer in, um, that person helps us get past that, because they're not sitting in the same emotions that we are. They see things differently and more clear.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I've seen that, and what I love about what you just said, some of the self-implementing companies that I'm now working with, that was one of the first things they said. It's like, I'm an accountability partner for them,
Yeah.
and we're documenting what the to-dos are, and you get beyond the law of the lid, because the emotionality is taken out of it. So the law of the lid means you're doing what you can do until you've done all you can, and then usually they'll end up going back to the way they used to do it. It becomes a problem of being able to fulfill what they said they want to fulfill, simply because they're trying to take it all on their own.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you describe that, as far as being that law of that lid, because you can only go to your ceiling. And when
Yes.
somebody like yourself comes in, you help them bust through that ceiling because you're at a different level, or at
Yeah.
least seeing things more clearly.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, I was doing a 90-minute meeting, which is just a presentation to a prospective client yesterday. And there's certain things that they were self-implementing starting in 23. And some of it they were doing, I mean, I was kind of like, wow, that's really cool that you did that. When we started talking about the meetings and making sure that they are getting to the root cause of the issues, and then actually having resolution for it, that was it was not as existent as some of the other things that we talked about.
And one of the things I forgot to mention in the intro, because I love the psychology piece and diving into that. I think that for me, that was, I've always, I didn't go to school for psychology. It was like coming out of high school. I was like, that was one on my one of two things I wanted to do was go into psychology. But then I realized how long you have to go to school in order to do that. And I'm like, I'll be a journalist instead. But
I love that.
so, but I've always, going back to my past, I was in therapy, from middle school on. I had like this abusive dad, and like it was one of those things of like I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to, so like that psychology and the why we do things the way we do, that was always a fascination for me and something that I would just in college I took the courses and stuff like that, but then just even my own learning and a lot of like books and stuff like that. And I think that was really what made me successful in my sales career, was understanding the psychology and why we're doing things. And then even now in interviewing and just that whole process, I think that's always been a big thing for me.
I think it helps with communicating a lot more effectively. And based on what you just said, I mean, I would wager that you're probably a really good listener also, instead of thinking about the next thing that you want to say.
Which is the biggest piece. My whole platform with sales is be the difference. In everybody says they listen, but most people are listening so they can reply. And if you're truly listening, I feel like sales or leadership is serving people at the highest level. If you're listening to them versus like listening to them to lead them a certain way, if we're really discovering what their problems are, if we're going into a company, for example, like, if we're really solving their issues and understanding what their gaps are and helping them, we're not selling, we're serving them.
Yes, yes, 100%. It's so funny when I used to be head of sales with different companies, and when I was with Dun and Bradstreet, one of the this is forever ago, so this is going to date me, and I'm going to sorry, but we rolled out spin selling by Neil Rackham, which pretty much leads you down whatever path you want them to take, which
Yep.
is the polar opposite of how we do things today. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
the way you were just talking about it, that is to me, um, the way to ensure long-term clients.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Like the way that things used to be done, or this old mindset, I think that was the reason why I even started my business, is because I saw that, sales are so easy. We're making it so hard. We have a lot of we're doing all these gimmicks. We're like, and a lot of it, all the stuff that we're doing, all that old school stuff is based down to the number one component, and it's fear. Like we're afraid, to do these things. So we're afraid to ask questions, so we're just like we're pushing, and there's so much down to it. But if we're really getting to know who's in front of us and what their challenges are, and we legit have the solution, it's a different story.
100%. Well, and what I love about that, also, and I'm sure you do it. I know I do it. If it's something there where something else can help them, take them to it. Refer them to it. Be
Yes.
a help. Be a help to them, not a
Yes.
hindrance. But
You're,
I do
you're you're trying
referrals
to sell them hardcore, and you're not the answer. or
right.
or you just know where you can actually get them started or get them connected to. And man, that makes all the difference in the world. They may not hire you, but they'll always think about you. They'll like refer you if they have an opportunity to.
Yeah, we call that abundance mindset. I'm sure you do
Abundance
too.
mindset. Absolutely.
Yeah,
We talk about it in the show constantly.
it is so important. And I mean, for me, I would rather help them find something that works for them. If it isn't EOS, that's cool. I mean, I've referred executive coaches, I've referred, fractional COOs, fractional sales leaders, right? I would rather get them to a place where they need to be. And the way I look at it is that karma will come back. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
I firmly believe that when you go out and you take care of people, that it does come back to you. And I always make a joke that it's not like knocking on your door like, Jackie, you remember that favor I did for you? It's now you owe me. It's not that, but you just go and you do good things. It's like it's a wonderful life. At the end of the movie, this guy thought that he didn't have a life worth any value, but at the end of the day, because he took care of his whole community, his whole entire life, the community came to rally around him.
Yes. By the way, I love that movie.
Ah,
It's my
yeah.
Christmas Eve movie every single year. But yeah, no, that's honestly the way I live my life. And it is, those are the people that I try to surround myself by. The people that aren't like that, you feel like they're more takers than givers. And I'm not 20 years old. I'm too old to have to deal with that. Yeah, sorry.
That's the nice thing about getting older, and like you said, you're gonna date yourself. It's like just showing your wisdom, But like it's that wisdom that we gain. That who cares what these people think over here? I don't have time to like try to make everybody like me.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think I did used to be like that. I wanted everybody to like me so much so that I was very
Yeah,
chameleonic
yeah,
in the way I was, right?
yep. If I thought I was in sales, I thought it was a great thing, a badge of honor to be a chameleon.
Yes.
Now I teach people to be their authentic selves.
Yes. Yes. That's like a hoo-hoo.
Stop doing that. Stop being somebody else. It's like here's another movie reference, but it's like being Rudolph and putting the black nose on, like it's
Oh,
uncomfortable. You're talking funny. Like people are like, what's wrong with that guy?
yes. It's so true. It is so true.
So for you, so I'm fascinated to know, like you're doing psychology, you're in that work. What took you to Fortune 500 companies?
So it's so funny. I just like you. I mean, I did my bachelor's in psych. I I did apply for a master's, and then I was like, I don't think I want to go to school anymore. I really don't want to do this. And it's so funny having a father who was in music and a mother she did volunteer work and worked with nonprofits and things like that. I I just was following what other like what the, where people were enjoying what they were doing. And a friend of mine who I went to college with, I think I saw him at probably at some, I'm from Syracuse, so we go to bars. That's what we do. So probably saw him at a bar and we were talking and he was telling me about how much how much he liked working at Dun and Bradstreet. And he'd only been there a short period of time. And so I was like, all right, you want to take my resume? And or else I faxed him over my resume. I
Another
faxed
date
him
or another
over.
landmark there.
Yeah, I totally did. And it was the thermal paper. Um, so I, I faxed him over my resume. I had some interviews and I interviewed there a couple times, and I've got a pretty strong personality. Um, but the one lady who offered me the position, she is my best friend to this day. So that was like forever ago, and she is still my best friend.
That's awesome.
She helped my husband after she left Dun and Bradstreet. She became a nurse. She helped my husband become a nurse. She goes with me, and like she met me in California because she wanted to go to wine country while I was doing sessions there. We go on vacation together, all that. But she tells everybody the story when she first meet them. It could be anybody. And she's like, yeah, no one wanted to hire Jackie, but I did. I figured I'd take a chance. The cool thing is once she showed me how to do the job, which, maybe I was remedial, but there was one thing that I was missing in trying to do well. Like I was probably sort of bottom of the totem pole of the rankings. And then as soon as she showed me this one thing, I went to the number 3 in the country. And
Wow.
so, like, I never would have been promoted if it weren't well, A, I never would have been hired by her. B, I never would have been promoted. But,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, she trained me, like, she took time with me. And I honestly, outside of psychology and all that, I don't think if I didn't have her as a manager who saw potential in me, that I would have been able to begin to I replicated what she did with me with like almost everybody in every company that I have worked for. And I honestly place my success to her because she took time with me when no one else would. And I almost
What
want to like I kind of wish that she would see this because I mean, that's how much of an impact she had.
what's her name?
Her name is Cheryl.
Cheryl. Cheryl's gonna see this. We're gonna make sure of it. This is
Okay.
broadcasted. We're gonna tag her into social media or something. We'll put the clip out there for
All
sure.
right. Okay. Sounds good.
We all need our Cheryls, right? Like if we don't have those people that come into our life that believe in us, and I want to make like one adjustment because you talked, and this is probably her role title, but you said manager, but that's a leader right there. That's
Oh,
not a
hell yeah,
manager.
she
That is
was.
somebody that is a leader that sees a potential in somebody and says, you know what, maybe they don't fit on the resume, maybe they don't fit in our box of what we think is going to be here, but there's something about this person that I believe in, and then to then stay with you and mentor you and rise you up because they see that potential. That's a difference maker.
Yeah, she is. She still is. I mean, and not just to me. When she became a nurse, like she was like she talked to my husband and he became a nurse and he's never been so happy
Ah,
ever.
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, there are
we
those
never
people out
know. Did you say this from the beginning? We never know how people are going to impact our lives.
there. Yeah.
There's three major ways that she came in and has changed the course of your life.
Yeah, well, I feel like she helped make my life. I mean, I'm sure there'd be other paths or whatever, but I think part of the reason I think it's different now. If somebody has a psychology background and worked in counseling or whatever, and like if not me, because I would see it based on somebody's persona, but like in those days, someone who was a psych background versus someone who had a business background at that point many people who were in business didn't think that I had the strength to be in business or to be in sales or to be persuasive or whatever it was that would take because why in God's name would you choose psychology? And also I had an art history minor, so that didn't help anything either. But
The backup wasn't any better.
yeah, and if I
Oh,
showed you
sure.
around this house, you would see that I have a passion for art. I
Yeah.
just can't do it. But I love it. So it's I think that has changed a lot now. I've got a 22-year-old, and he was like, "No, a lot of people have like psych and then a business minor or something like that." So it's really cool to see the evolution of our businesses because people don't put that stigma on it,
Yes.
you know? And
Yeah.
by the way, who said that you have to know what you're gonna do when you're 18 years old? I
I
mean,
think that's the biggest like out of the box thing that we can come across is like, why are you deciding what you're going to do for the rest of your life at 18? You have no idea who you are at 18.
exactly.
You're still
You
worried about
really
what everybody else thinks.
yes, and that took me several years past 18, so
Well, for sure. I mean, but you're in the height of it at 18.
yeah,
It took me several years past 18 as well to shed that. You're in the height of caring about what everybody thinks. And that's what happens is so many people go into this career and they start a life and then they're like knees deep into their bills because they've, accumulated a certain lifestyle and they hate their lives.
yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting. It's cool. Like with what I do. So I've got one guy who's a mentee of mine. His name is Taylor, and I think he's in Texas or Denver. It's one of the two. But he is a lawyer And he said, Jackie, he's like, after a little while, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have a passion around it. I need to have something where I'm passionate. And like, he's kicking butt.
That's so
But I
awesome.
mean, it also takes balls to, after however many years, especially after law school or med school or some sort of higher education, where you are like, this isn't what I want to do. And then you give yourself the ability to change directions. And I love that about the people that have done that, that are implementers. My husband did the same thing. He was miserable at what he was doing for 18 years of our lives together. He went back to nursing school when he was 38. And I met him when he was 20. So that's
Wow.
a long time of being
That's a long
miserable.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
How different is he?
He is, I mean, I think he's always been, at least he tells me, he's always been happy in his personal life.
Yeah.
He's a great husband,
At
great
least he
dad.
tells me.
Yeah, at least he tells me that. Um, but, but like in his professional life, he was not happy. And like, then he went to nursing school and he became a cardiac surgical nurse and he just flew. I mean, you have to have like, it's so funny you were talking about like spin selling being fear-based, selling being fear-based many, like, forever ago. But
Yep.
it's the same type of thing. Like, you've got to be able to lean into the danger to make change in what you want to do. The
Yep.
cool thing with Rich, that's my husband's name, is that like I've always, like, for the longest time, I was I was the stable person. I was the one that took care of things. And it was quite a few of the Vistage chairs when I was with Vistage that were like, you can go off on your own. You've got it. You can do it. And Rich had heard it so many times. And he's very, like, he's the opposite of me. I'm very woohoo. And he's very, the yin to my yang.
Yep. Yep.
And another story that'll choke me up a little bit, although I've told him this and I've told other people in front of him. The one time in all of our years together, I was coming home from the office, and he was sitting in the backyard with, we had a fire pit. So he had the fire pit going. He had 2 glasses of red wine, and I went out and he sat me down, and for 2 hours he was talking to me about how he could take care of things if I fell, and that he had my back. If it weren't for him doing that, we would not be having this conversation today.
That choked me up. So that's so powerful. Especially when you're describing him, of he's the, probably like the C type personality, right? And
Yes.
the facts and numbers and like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got the S too, as the nurse,
S.
but
Yep. Yep.
but but no, he was a cheerleader for 2 hours until I finally caved. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like, we never would be having this. I wouldn't have been able, anything that I've been doing over the past 6 years wouldn't exist.
It's just so cool how you both found your purpose and how much more powerful that is, because again, you can be happy in your personal life, but you're going and doing this work thing for so many hours of your life. And I know, like, my wife, for example, when I started my business, I was out having a lot of fun, like I was out exploring and figuring it out and meeting a lot of cool people and having some great conversations. And I'd come home with this excitement. And in the meantime, she was working a job that she hated. She had bosses that made her feel small and didn't listen to her, or like didn't value her opinion. And so she was miserable. And so, but that would carry over when she would come home, and just, in a way that you can't really control. There's a certain way that you feel when you're not lit up with what you're doing.
Absolutely. It's an entirely different confidence and joy that's complete.
Hmm. Yes. Tell me more about, you're talking about the lawyer, and tell me more about the people that come in and decide that they're going to be implementers, and how they start working with you.
So people that want to be implementers come from all different areas. In the beginning, and at first, I like. It's so funny because the guy who coached me, I now coach with, and there were a couple of us that, I worked with CEOs. I like 100 of them, more than that. I helped them grow their business, but I didn't own my own business. And I would say up until, I don't know, we'll say, I think there are a few of us, myself and a girl that used to work with QVC, were in the same group. But most of the other folks own their own business. So now it's really wrapped around, are you a core values fit? And do you have the ability, because of your network and because of your ability to go out and present yourself, if can you do that? So a lawyer, usually you wouldn't think, unless they're a rainmaker lawyer, that they would be able to do that. This guy, once you get him talking, he is just like, you want to listen to what he says. So it's people who are like, I've got serial entrepreneurs. I've got people who, were worked in their family business. One guy also in the same group as the lawyer, he was working with his family's business, and then he decided he wanted to, and he went through EOS. So a lot of these folks
Yep.
went through EOS with an implementer. This guy was one of those guys. And he was like, I want to do what you're doing. So it can go across the board. What happens outside of that? I mean, because there also are people, and I'll share. There was a gentleman who I used to work with, who I've got the utmost respect for. When I worked in DC at Corporate Executive Board, he was like for me, like he walked on water. And he called me and he was like, hey, and this was about a year ago, I think. He's like, I know you're an implementer, and I'm interested in doing that. And we were talking, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I think you'd be great at it. The same passion that you're hearing from me, everyone who talks to me hears. Right.
Yep.
And I had him, like, I was like, just go through the process. And then if you decide that you don't want to do it, then you don't have to. I'm like, because he still had to go through he had to go through the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he spoke with another implementer who was talking about like the biz dev part, business development.
Yep.
And she told him, she's like, it's not easy to do it, and that it takes time. And whatever was said, he decided he wasn't going to do it. And you would rather find out before the financial investment,
Yep.
going through boot camp, getting yourself integrated within the community. You'd rather find out before than once you've done all that. So there is a process by which EOS goes through to try to weed out people that don't want to do biz dev, or don't have any network. Sometimes the network part can be tricky because people will say they have one. They're like, oh yeah, I know all these people, and they might not be the right people,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that's it. I'd say the biggest part of being an implementer, outside of, because people look at when we're in the room facilitating, I mean, there aren't many people that I know that are like, oh, that's the part that really bugs me. It's the biz dev, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how many people don't even think about that? They get excited about the implementer piece, but then you really forget that you're an entrepreneur now, and you have to go and gain your business.
Yes. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I'm living this like real time now. I was a successful implementer in Los Angeles. My mom got sick in June of 23. So last year we moved back to the East Coast so that I can get home whenever I'm needed or whenever anything happens. And so I am in biz dev mode now, as much as I was when I first started in
Yeah. Yeah.
2019. So and
Well, it's
the cool thing is,
consistency.
yes, yes, yes. It is the cool thing is like being able to have it happen again. And it takes time and you've got to have the patience, which I lack a little bit of. But trying to rebuild what you're doing and transition clients that are where you like I'm transitioning clients in California to other implementers, honestly, just because this way when they're needed with those clients, they can be there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's your life cycle for a client?
Most clients stay with an implementer for around 2 years. I have some that have been with me for 5. And then you have some that have like just aren't even there for a year.
Yeah,
But as an average, I'd say it's between 2 and 3 years.
2 and 3. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's like that. That's like how many clients does a typical implementer have?
I would say it depends on the implementer. Some are
Yeah,
like, okay, 10 is good. Some have got 30 plus. For me, 20 to, I don't know, we'll say somewhere between 20 to 25 is the right number.
yep. That's awesome. It's like by just figuring it out as you go, like what you can take on.
Well, yeah, actually, it's hilarious because if you asked me that 3 years ago, I was like, oh, yeah, 30 is my number. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, not even, no. Like, no, no, no.
There'd be no time. No time.
There'd be no time, exactly. So, and you have to if you we have something that we call the EOS life, and that is doing what you love with people you love, making a difference, being fairly compensated, and having time for other passions. And when you are overextending yourself, those other passions go.
Yeah, and then what's filling your bucket? Because work is
Right.
great, but what is those other passions? And I actually saw something that you're a lead singer in a rock band.
Yeah, I in California I do yeah, I've sang with them since I moved, but yeah, I did that for like 8 years. And
Wow.
it is a passion play. I think apples don't fall far from trees.
Yeah, yeah.
My dad, except my dad's got every single musical instrument that he could play in a heartbeat, and they let me play the sticks and the triangle. You know. Sometimes the maracas and what's that? Oh my god. Yeah, those are about it.
That is awesome. So you were out mainly in California at this time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, we had gigs every month. It was a passion play more than anything. I mean, growing up, I was in chorus and plays and things like that. It's just something I've always done. Um, the coolest thing for me, it's a two-part thing because it came full circle. My dad was inducted into the Syracuse Music Hall of Fame, and I sang on stage with him when it was videoed, and it was I got to sing with his band and really really amazing cool stuff. And then in 2021, my dad flew out to California and played with my band.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was
That's so
so
awesome.
cool. And like just seeing like he's an amazing musician. And he also did like when with the bands that he had, he was also always the person getting the gig. So he was marketing the bands and all that. So he sort of had both sides. Um, but having seeing him with his band and then seeing how much passion and effort he put into playing with mine was just awesome. The funny part is that a lot of the songs that my band did were some of the ones that his band did because we were classic rock.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So he like there was no gap.
No, no, and which is sort of sad, I guess. So, but he played for like 50 years. So, he was actually some of the stuff that he played was a lot more um like up to date than what our band was doing.
Was a lot of your influence from your dad though?
It was both. So my mom has got a beautiful voice and she did like she did a lot of plays and sang and things like that. Um, my dad was the rock and roller, so it was both. The only thing that my mom did that I didn't, and it was she did a lot of dancing too. When I took ballet, she looked at me and she's like, "You have no grace at all." She's not wrong.
That is hilarious. Oh, so what does that like, what does that look like as far as like keynote speaking and how does that all play into what you're doing?
So, I mean, one of the I guess it's sort I did never even tied these until you just said it like that. I'm not afraid to talk in front of people at all. So, I've been a speaker with EOS since I started. I'm now certified in the Speakers Bureau through EOS. So, like, I am actually, it's funny, Monday I'm driving from Charlotte to Charleston to speak with an automotive distributors association. So, I'm doing that on Monday. Um, I've spoken with hundreds of different, like where the audience is several hundred people, and then small groups. I mean, I'm a speaker with Vistage, so that group size is probably around somewhere between 12 and 16, and everything in between. So it's everything from like, and I could go like chambers to different other women's groups, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, but it's everything from a 20-minute talk about what EOS is to what I'm doing. Like on Monday, it's a 3.5 hour workshop, and it's so
That's
much
fun
fun.
stuff.
Yeah, very different type of thing that you're doing. But what I love about what I'm doing on Monday, and I love these types of workshops, is they walk away with nuggets that they can like think about or try to implement, or maybe they want implementation. But everybody gets a beautiful book, and this time it's not upside down. Everybody gets a book. They get like the book of tools too, and I always bring some fun stuff for them too.
It's awesome. So actually really cool. Gino does his podcast out of the studio that I'm in right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of the cool thing. I think actually not too long after we talked, he had started doing that. He does the Shine podcast with Rob Dubay.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So that is from the horse's mouth for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So super cool. I know when I first read the book Traction, it was handed to me. It was like there was a lot of things that my mentor had taught me as I was, I got really good at sales, and was growing. I'd learned how to teach my team and develop my team, and so we had gotten to be one of the top locations in the state. But I was just really undisciplined with the leadership stuff and wasn't getting all my daily things done. It would be no surprise to walk into my location at any point. I'd have 8 days of deposits sitting, in the back, just like hanging out. Nobody had taken them back. And it was just like, slinging sales and developing people and not doing any of the other things. And this guy just really mentored me, kicked my ass, really helped me shift my mindset and really understand how to become a more of a leader and understand that business owner mentality versus just being a manager, or
Yes.
maybe a bad manager. And as I read Traction, it was like, wow, a lot of this like delegation piece that I struggled with so bad at the beginning that I finally, it made sense. A lot of this stuff falls right in line. And so I can really resonate with you when you're talking about reading it and all of a sudden being like, wow, this is now documented. I can really resonate with this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and by the way, you're not alone when you talk about like delegating. There are so many, almost, there aren't many CEOs that I have met that they're like, oh, yeah, I delegate all this stuff. No, they try to control as much as they can.
Absolutely.
And what happens is they end up choking their company
Yeah.
because, yeah, because they're trying to take care of everything. That also that's also funny because I talked about that yesterday in that 90-minute meeting I was talking to you about. I was talking about the CEO. These companies are their babies. And when you talk about a company being a baby, even though you know you can't take care of everything, it's difficult to let go. The
Yes.
cool thing with delegating and elevating and making sure you've got the right people in the right seat so you can delegate things is then the CEO can actually do things that are more strategic, that have more impact on their companies instead of like giving it a chokehold.
It's so huge. This is a pretty good example. I have a client I just started with, and she is in the home health industry. She has a home health care company, and when I first sat down with her and talked with her, the big challenge she's having is hiring people. She's never been a business owner before. She saw a problem in the marketplace. She sees the world a certain way, and she cares for people at a really high level. And so she set out in this mission to change the way that home health is done and the way we see elderly people. And so, but she's having a hard time hiring people and filling roles to grow her company. So she'll go in and take care of somebody, and the families only want her, or the client only wants her to come in. They don't want her people. And so sitting down with her and really understanding what her mission, her passion, where she's really looking versus that gap of the type of people she's hiring, and the gap of transferring that knowledge and those expectations in training and processes. So she's just hiring people from the nursing home that have the experience that she's experienced or that she saw that she wants to change. She wants to have this, mission and this revolution, but she's hiring the same people that she's been working with, plopping them in and not doing any kind of change. And so one, let's attract the right people. Right. And so she shows me her job description, and I'm like, what do you think? And I'm like, I've seen so many bad job descriptions that this is pretty good. It's not a bad job description, but it looks like everybody else's. You just told me that you're on this mission. You're out to change the world. Now let's talk that passionate and paint what the world change looks like in this description. So when people read it that they agree and align with that mission, we're gonna find the right people and be able to weed out if we have these core values of what you have, right, as a company, or
Right.
who you are as a company. We're going to weed out those people out of the first interviews right out of the gates, right? And then when you bring on the right people that are empathetic and see the world, see people as people, and you have that right person, the right seat. Now, what do you do to train them and develop them and elevate them? So
Yes.
it's fun. We change her job description, and instantly she's just getting a different quality of person in.
That is a great story, and that is a success story.
It's fun, and it's fun because she literally has that heart to go out and change the world. She's like, I've never been a business owner before, and so I don't know what I don't know, and so she's so coachable with it. But you know, something that we see so easily of like, you're not training them, you're not documenting the
Yeah.
processes, like you're just sending them out, and she's like, they're not cooking for them, and they're not, taking out their trash, and it's like, did you tell them they were supposed to do that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well,
No.
what's the care plan say? Like, do you have a care plan for like what this person like? No, why would I do that? And it was like, well, you're sending people into a house that you don't even know and saying like, figure it out. Like
It's
those are
true.
unicorns. Like there's the less than 1% of the people out there that just go and figure it out.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
they're not
and
applying for your entry level job. I'm sorry.
that is awesome. That is so, and it's she's not alone with that.
No, it's and I'm not saying this at anybody's her. That's what you think. You think you're gonna just
Yes,
hire people, and you take them for they seem nice, and how do you judge it if you don't have a core value, if you haven't been through it, and what kind of questions to ask and how to and even the traits that you're looking for in a person.
exactly, exactly. No, that's awesome, and it's like I said, that's an awesome success story, and I wish you could like we need to replicate that.
Exactly. Well, I am looking for clients. No. always always looking for clients. So if you need to replicate it, no,
Yes.
no. It's again, it's about embracing that story. Who are you? You know, like helping that visionary really document, you know, and get that vision onto like a sales and marketing story. Like authentically, who are you? You know, helping them figure out what is that superpower. Because a lot of us, we beat each other ourselves up for what we're not and the things that we're missing, and we try to improve our weaknesses, and we spend very little time focusing and understanding what are our strengths, what are we really good at, what are we better than anybody else,
Yes.
what is our superpower, how do
Yes.
we see the world that's different than everybody, what's that thing that we do because it's so easy, and then when we do it, everybody's like, wow, how'd you do that? And we're just like, oh, we just did, that's so easy. And like we don't even stop and give ourselves credit for how freaking special that is.
I love that. And you were talking about that, and I was thinking about, because I'm sure for your kids too, like I have, because my kids have seen that I believe in, like I told you, Cheryl trained me, and every single person that I've worked with since then, I will do what I need to do to help make them
Yes,
successful.
it's
So
paying it
I've got a
forward, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a 32-year-old son who works for this company called Sazerac. Sazerac is like Buffalo Trace, Pappy's, Fireball. It's a spirits company.
Hmm.
And he's not even their manager yet. I know he's interviewing for it, but he trains every single person that goes in there to help them make their best selves. He put together a training program because they've missed one guy missed the mark by 0.1%. 0.1. Another
Wow.
person, two, like they were at 98% of goal. Not like the one that was 99.98. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like that's one extra bottle or one whatever you were selling. But you had
Yeah.
like you have to give them the tools to be successful. You can't just do it and have them go out and like get
Just
pissed
sell
when they
more.
don't do it. Yeah. Yeah. Give them the tools. And that
It's
that is all.
a lot of sales meetings are a lot like if you ever spent time around youth sports. Youth sports always make me laugh because you hear the coaches and the dads that yell like, "Catch the ball!" Like, tackle them. You know, like they're just yelling these things, and like do you think the kid wouldn't have caught the ball if he could have? You know, like he
Right,
doesn't want to drop the
right.
ball. He's a 10-year-old kid. You know, like we're screaming things like, but like we don't like what are we coaching them in practice? Like, what are we teaching them in practice? What are they, you know, how are we developing them versus the, even in practice, yelling, like, you got to catch it next time. Like, you got to
Yeah,
run faster. Like, what does that even
yes.
mean? Listening to
I get
parents yell at kids or coaches yell at kids on the sports field is hilarious. But you hear that same thing in like sales meetings. Like, we got the goal is here. You got to hit these numbers. Now go out there and get it today. Like, we're in a pumped up voice. So that's going to rally us all.
it's so funny when I'm doing scorecards. So one of the 6 key components of EOS is data. One of the 2 tools that we use in that is a scorecard. It's a weekly scorecard. And there it takes everything when I am speaking with people. It's not with everybody, but we'll say a quarter of the companies, let's just say they're like, no, we have to be at 80. That's what we projected. We have to be at 80. And I see what their numbers are, and they're at 10. I'm like, so how are you going to go from 10 to 80? They're like, well, I don't know, but we have to be at 80. I'm like, all right, look, maybe we should look at a ramp. And also, what are you doing to help facilitate the growth, right? How are
Yes.
we working with our people? And let's start. If we're at 10, why don't we put it at 15? Once we get it for a couple weeks at 15, we'll move it to 25 and then 50, whatever, until you get to 80. But right now, you're just really um, making people sad that they are never meeting it and they are giving up,
They're
right?
hopeless. They think it's
Yes.
impossible.
Yeah. Similar to catch the ball and tackle them without knowing what that means.
It's so similar. But then even what's the difference between a lag goal and a lead goal? You know, like we need 80. Okay, great. How do you get them? Like what's the most important revenue generating activity you can be doing right now in order to do that? And how can we
Right.
get really good at that thing?
Right. No, it's so true. Well, and it's, of course, my mind immediately went, I was explaining the difference between marketing qualified sales leads and marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, and that they're different. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we need to get 80. Anything that comes on the website, we're making that sale.
We're going 80 for 80.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like, okay, but only two of them actually are qualified to sell to based on what you're selling to. So it's a and I wish I could say it was only in sales, but it's like throughout the organization,
It
right?
is. It is. And it's one of those things that's like it's funny and it's laughable, but it's like how many inches are around us at this point in order to make that company successful when you can get them on track. When you see that companies are in that disarray from just their scorecard across sales and operations and all the things.
It's awesome. It's awesome when that happens. It is awesome. There's a company, they've been a client for quite a few years, but they're based in Alaska, and they just did they kill things. They do great. And I am doing they did a peer review, a 360 peer review, and I'm the person that's giving each person the feedback. Um, and which is why my cough drops are here, because there's like a lot of them. Um, but but the lady that I was talking to today, we were actually talking about, look, how do we get people? What do we need to do? And how can we all be on the same page to ensure that we achieve those results from department to department, strategic and tactical? And I mean, that was just part of the conversation that we had today. Really, really cool conversation that I'm pretty sure when we first started, that wouldn't have even been in the top 10 of what we would have talked about.
Yes. That's so fun when you can see that growth in even the conversations.
Yeah, a lot. It's awesome.
Again, like going back and like, it's like through that EOS process, through the L10s, through the quarterlies, like it's like you're tracking it. So you can see that progress, in the numbers. But again, it's got to be just beautiful to see them getting it.
It is beautiful seeing them get it, and what's even better is them getting it together. I mean,
Mm,
it's always cool when there's a couple people, but then with this particular company, I mean, just the change that they've had in working together and connecting the circles and making sure that everybody's on the same page. It's just such a night and day difference, and it fills my heart. It really, really does. Having healthy teams, which, it's interesting because there are companies. Well, I don't know how many of those that don't want health in an organization that would ever go to EOS, but the amount of growth that they have as a team and creating that healthier, in other words, I'm leaning into the danger if we're going to talk about something, and it's okay if you tell me something that I need to adjust,
yes. Yeah.
versus having those walls up and just seeing that dynamic shift in the way they are as a collective personality is it's amazing what this process can do. It really, really is.
It's really huge, and it also reminded me of a couple guests I've had on a few months ago. Ken Bogard and Grace Gavin. Do you know them?
Mhm, mhm.
From no on, with their book, and just that the difference that open and honest communication brings.
It's huge, and so many people are afraid to do it. But then it sits there, like, if you can't talk about things, which a lot of people can't because 'cause they're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, but then it sits there and it gets between the two people,
Yes.
so they get further apart because they
Yes.
can't talk about what's going on.
Yeah. It's crazy. The most influential book I've ever, well, one of the most influential books I've ever read in my life is Leadership and Self-Deception. I've read this book no less than 30 times. If you were on my
Ah,
leadership team, you had to read this book before you were even considered. And it wasn't just read the book. It was like, I did a study group with them, and they would have to we'd meet and we'd really dissect it. It really takes you deep, but it goes into how those communication breakdowns happen and how people become objects really quickly. And I would see that with leaders all the time, where they'd call me up and they'd talk about somebody on their team, and they'd be like, I just don't understand why they can't, do this, or why they're late, or whatever gripe they had about them. They're like, I see so much potential in them, and if they just did this and this, they'd be amazing, and blah, and they'd be ranting to me, and it'd be like, have you told them that? They're like, what do you mean?
No.
I'm like, that thing that you just told me, you were so passionate about how amazing they would be if they just, if they got this. I'm like, have you ever told them how amazing you think they would be, or that you think they are, and their potential? And have you ever asked them what is getting in the way? And why is this happening? As opposed to filling in the gaps and assuming, because what we do is we deceive ourselves by not having that conversation, because that's a tough conversation. I think a lot of times we think as leaders, like, we should go and have this conversation, and then we don't, because it's so much easier to call my boss or whoever and bitch about it,
Right.
like complain about it to somebody. And then we're now around the water cooler, and we're looking for a justification. We're like colluding. We're like trying to get other people to be like, oh yeah, I had a problem with them too. And now all of a sudden it's not us that's wrong. Like, everybody has a problem with this person and this person. And now, like, we have it in this head that this person just doesn't care. And before you know it, like, we're acting a different way to them. And then all of a sudden they're
Yeah.
acting a different way to us. And that's how that whole relationship sours until either that person quits or is fired.
It's so true. That it is so, so true. I mean, I I think it takes well, maybe it's training. I don't know. I know for me, like, I think it was when I was in Vistage, like working at Vistage, some of the chairs were like, you need to be your authentic self and say what needs to be said.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of a wake up call, like, whatever my corporate whatever was, that doesn't serve you anymore. And I actually don't think it ever does. It's just nobody tells you that, nobody points it out. And so you just sit there thinking that's the way it should be. And what that does is it really puts a barrier between you and whoever,
Yes.
and that doesn't help anybody.
It really, really doesn't. It's like it's it's staying on the surface, and that's even with this show of, like, I love getting past that surface and having some deeper conversation, and I was having a conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago, and I told them how easy it is to make content, like, they were struggling to make social media content. And I know this person, and she comes off very like, she talks like an infomercial, essentially, is the best way to
Oh
put it.
no.
And like, she means really well. She's got a great story. The reason why she does what she does is, there's a great reason by it. She has great intentions, but when you constantly talk like an infomercial, it makes people feel like you're really salesy. And so I'm like, I told her how easy it is to make content. I'm like, come to my office, we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation, I'll record it, and I'll show you how we can create some content out of that. And she was like, great. So she comes to my office, and we're talking, and she's not going past the infomercial. It's just constant infomercial. Like, and I'm like, hey, you got to stop it. Like, we gotta break past this wall, because I can't use any of this. Like, I can't help you make great content. That's why your content's not doing good, because you're like talking like this. I know inside you there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. Let's break past that shell. And it was an hour of wasted time because I couldn't get her there. But then what was really cool is she called me the next day, and she was like, thank you for kicking my ass. I went home and I thought about it all day. And she started telling me about how, she's 72, and she was like, coming up, like, I feel like I've got to have this corporate shell. I've got to be
Yeah.
this certain way, because I came up as, as a woman, and I've got to, I got to present myself a certain way. And she was like, I think sadly that's been ingrained in who I am so much that that's just the way that I am. And I've got to change that. And so, it's cracking through that, because, don't be yourself.
I think passion used to be a weakness,
Yes.
and now it is revered,
Yes.
right? And to me, what breaks beyond that shell is asking questions about, why are you passionate about this? Like, what is it
Yes.
about this that makes you so excited? And, as long as they're actually listening to you instead of in their own head, I feel like you're very good at having people talk about things that are, kind of deep in their hearts or souls.
Well, we got to get deep, and we're talking about, if people coming in and being implementers, and you got to do the business development. And, there's a lot of people, we're coming into a society where it's going to get more and more and more, where you're seeing people leaving the corporate America or their day job and coming into consulting. I think it's the largest growing business that's out there right now. A lot of people coming, starting their own businesses and going into consulting. And it's really important to be able to embrace and tell that story, to really understand why it is what you're doing. Because if you're going on a mission, it's so much easier to sell. If you're telling a story, there's data, story is data with soul. And so, example, I do a boot camp every Monday for entrepreneurs, and it's really to help them crack through their story, help them overcome objections, both internally and externally, with potential internally in their mind, externally with their clients. And I have a boot camper in the event that does payment processing. In payment processing, I've worked with and trained payment processors, and there's nobody I've met that does it for passion. They're usually looking for a job that pays well, but there's nobody I've met that has passion for it. And I asked her that very question you just said, I said, why do you believe in what you're doing? Like, outside of making money, like, why do you believe in what you're doing? Because I can teach anybody how to sell, like, authentically and have fun with it. But they've got to
Right.
believe that what they're doing is changing somebody's life. They've got to believe that what they're doing is serving that person. And if they don't, I can't teach you. But so she starts telling me this amazing story about how she grew up with two entrepreneurs, or both of her parents were entrepreneurs, and they own these businesses, and she watched them get nickel and dimed. And there were things that they were paying for they didn't even realize that they were paying for. It ultimately impacted the way that they did business. And so when she's going into these places, she's seeing that they're being nickel and dime by all these other companies that are out there. And she's talking so passionately about this. I'm like, that's your difference. Like, when you're going out, like, when people are telling you to go away, it's like, hey, I'm doing this because I've grew up in business and I've watched people be nickel and dimed, and you might not even know what's going on, and maybe you're not. But what is your passion? And I think you're right. There was a time where that vulnerability and that passion wasn't as big a deal, and things are changing. We got to know, especially when there's so many real estate agents out there, or so many coaches or consultants or whatever out there, so many implementers to choose from. What makes you different? Because there is an abundance mindset in there, in the sense of there's enough for everybody. But why do I really fit with you, and you're going to make the biggest impact?
Exactly. No, and that's something that I talk to all of my 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 mentees about, right? And it's also something that I work with clients, right? What separates you? What are we call them uniques. It's in the
Yeah.
marketing strategy. But, like, what differentiates you? What makes you different? Let's make three really crystallized items that make you different than everybody else that does what you do.
Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been such an awesome conversation. I'm so glad Christine connected us.
Oh my gosh, me too. And it's the time has flown. So I appreciate you doing this on a Friday afternoon, and I'm
Ah,
really excited about the opportunity.
these are the things that I get to do, Jackie. I'm like, Friday afternoon, I'm ending my afternoon with a podcast with a difference maker out there. Like, this is the stuff that lights me up. So I appreciate it. I'm glad it worked out on I'm happy whenever, Mondays are my normal time, but to get to end the week with it is pretty sweet.
Well, I'm glad we could do it today too. And thank you
I'm
again
glad you
for
got sick and had to be out of commission for a month in order to make this
well,
happen,
there's
Jackie.
I'm glad I have a voice today. No, it's
Me
been a
too,
true
absolutely.
pleasure. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And have a phenomenal rest of the day.